We did it! 300 hours and we finally finished Heavensward. Oh my god, what a story. I could go to Stormblood. Endwalker has finally arrived, and I did what I thought was right and took a step back from Final Fantasy for a week. I am not there in Endwalker. Obviously, even Squeenix was saying there were going to be queues of like 10,000 plus, and hashtag deal with it. That was the situation those guys were saying, so it made sense that I, who is doing old content, did not take up server space by doing that. So I took myself away for a week, and we did a Minecraft challenge, which was fantastic fun with all their new content. But then that week was over. I was seeing many more people completing the Endwalker MSQ, which meant it was time to jump back in. One problem, though. I am right up to Stormblood. I talked at length about how much I enjoyed the Heavensward story and how much it filled me with. And for the response you guys gave to that video was unbelievable. One of the most liked videos we've had in a long time. But we can't just go into Stormblood. That's the problem. We can't just go there because... although, and I think this is going to be the main crux of this video, is that it's very clear and apparent to me that a lot of people who made part of the exodus from World of Warcraft over to Final Fantasy XIV did the most logical thing, which was to complete the main story quests to get to the end or the current present point of the game in a nice linear fashion. Now, the sad thing is about that is there are a lot of extras that are thrown in there that you can miss. They're not mandatory content by any means, but they're super, super fun. And as with everything in Final Fantasy XIV, they're entirely relevant today. Not only that, we actually discovered some quests that people who have played Final Fantasy XIV for years did not know even existed. So we'll come back to that in a second. The first thing I wanted to do, I set myself several goals coming out of Heavensward. One, I wanted to complete all the extremes because they're super fun. They're the best raid content that I've enjoyed so far is doing extremes. They obviously vary in enjoyability depending on the type of fight. Bismarck kind of sucks. But they're really, really fun, and they're something we can kind of do in an afternoon. They're designed that way. Haven't done the Savage raids yet. It's going to be coming back to doing those at a later date, because again, Final Fantasy XIV keeps all its content relevant forever, so it doesn't particularly matter. But alongside that, I really wanted to check out a couple of things in Heavensward before we kind of put a bow in that one and said that area of the game is done. One of them was Hildibrand. Now, I spoke about Hildibrand probably over a month ago when I was introduced to it in A Realm Reborn. And in fact, it was you guys on YouTube who were spamming that comment section to say, you have to do this. You have to do it. Now, I imagine some people listening to this have never done Hildibrand before because it is optional side content and they may have tried it and it's really off-the-wall wacky. In fact, the more I learn about the Hildibrand character, the more intrigued I am as to how good of an idea this is. Although the content isn't specifically for everyone. In fact, it's going to be very strange for a lot of people because it's not serious. It's completely off the wall. It's entirely bonkers. But Squeenix used it when they were creating A Realm Reborn to start throwing mud at the wall. And this takes me all the way back to the legacy of the Burning Crusade, where my finale message conclusion to that was a period of time that Blizzard was just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. But instead of investing all their eggs into singular baskets, they were just throwing stuff around to see what the hell people liked and didn't like. And one of the things is they knew the original version of Final Fantasy XIV was coming to an end and A Realm Reborn was about to happen, is they could have fun. They could have really silly fun because the game was going to disappear pretty soon. The original very vanilla version of Final Fantasy XIV. And one of these things was Hildibrand. Hildibrand was just wacky, stupid stories, but also a test bed. An important test bed. A test bed for animations. They really wanted to mess around with just how silly and wacky and off the wall they could get with things like facial animations, expressions, and just throwing some really stupid stuff together just to say, look, this is a very silly part of the game. It's not to be taken too seriously, so they could kind of push the envelope a little bit with what those characters were doing, and they did that in spades. And if you've no idea what I'm talking about, Google where you start it and go and try it out. Now, Hildibrand is a relatively short quest line, something you can bash out in a few hours, And it usually rewards you with something kind of nice, usually some sort of emote or some kind of dance, something like that, something cosmetic for your character. Now, coming into the end of Heavensward, I was like, where's Hildibrand? Because I would imagine this would be a recurring character. Now, the obvious part of this is, even despite the hundreds of hours I now have in Final Fantasy XIV, the community is so goddamn extraordinary that they've spoiled nothing for me. At all. It's all a fresh experience every single day, and we enjoy every single moment and are thankful for that. So we asked the question, is there a Hildibrand? And like, yeah, there's a Hildibrand. Now, for those of you who know about Hildibrand, I was expecting, which I often do as we're going through Final Fantasy XIV, certain things. One of them, based on the original Hildibrand I did in A Realm Reborn, would be recurring characters, right? We have this sort of Sherlock Holmesian character who meets 7 or 8 different characters that all end up intertwined and recurring. They're coming back. They're involved later down the line. So, and those characters kind of go their separate ways at the end of A Realm Reborn. So my full expectation would be that in the Heavensward version of Hildibrand, we would see those characters' returns. But Squeenix, once again, just took my expectations, put them in the bin, threw a match on it, and just went, nope, that's not what we're doing. And this was surprising. Well, not only is the questline much, much shorter, like much, much shorter, but they decided to introduce a whole bunch of new characters and not particularly bother with the older characters. On the one hand, this was great. It was a fresh, surprising, and the story is actually very, very good. Although it's short, it's much more concise than the Realm Reborn version. It was very, very good. It was something I was interested in. It's a little awkward at times, which is what it's supposed to be. It's very funny. Some of the characters do return, such as his father. You having a heart attack? Is that what's happening? Did he just die? That's fucking genius. But overall, a lot of the side characters in Realm Reborn did not come back. Now, that doesn't mean to say I didn't enjoy it. It was more a expectation taken, thrown away. Oh, okay, we're doing something totally different. So in the back of my mind, I was definitely expecting certain characters to return, and they didn't. And that was fine because the contained story they had was really cool, and they brought in characters from other Final Fantasies, brought them into the mix, and once again, as always, made me care. I really gave a fuck about a little robot man. Like, I really gave a shit about that guy. Really gave a shit about that guy, who ultimately ended up being the reward for the quest line. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. But here's where it gets more interesting for us Final Fantasy XIV fans, and something I mentioned earlier in the video, is that once that was wrapped up, that was me kind of done. I've done the story, I've done the MSQ, I've done the Hildibrand questline, that's what I know about. There are definitely a couple of raid challenges still to explore, but for now, we're done in this area, and after playing Minecraft for a week, I was really hungry to get back into the MSQ. I was really excited to see what they were going to do with the Stormblood storyline, especially as the end of Heavensward is a big cliffhanger as to what you're about to go into. Before I did that, though, in comes Superstar, swinging from the rafters, our very own Mr. Chunky Ninja, says, hold your horses one little bit. There are characters that are in the original Hildibrand story, and they have their own questline. And not many people know it exists. Now, those of you out there who do know it exists, that's great, but I can tell you after streaming this to many thousands of people, there are a lot of people who have no idea this exists, and finding these hidden gems and going on this journey is something I would really like to express to you guys. So, Mr. Chris is going to put up what this quest is, and I recommend you do it because it gives you several emotes and some really good glamour and things like that, but it involves Inspector Brian, or Briaden, who is, we call him Brian, who is a main character in the original Hildibrand story. And this was such a hidden gem that I really wanted to talk about it, especially for those people who don't know it exists or have never seen this before and are still really interested in doing the story. Because, of course, with the Exodus, most people just take part in the MSQ, which are clearly marked. And this quest is actually just marked as a normal side quest. And anybody who had tried to do some of the side quests in the original game will no doubt remember that a lot of the early ones are just basic MMO combat quests, which aren't particularly interesting in any way. There are some hidden gems, and we're going to explore them as we go through our journey throughout Final Fantasy, but this is one I thought we should focus on today. And it's about going to one of the main schools of Ishgard. So, the quest is up there, so your own fault for spoilers at this point on. This was so good again, and again, it just gives more and more points to Heavensward in so many different ways. Because this explored what the church had to deal with after Ishgard has been completely disrupted, and the corruption and the lies have been brought to the front, and how were the church not only dealing with this complete change of theocracy, but how they were going to deal with their students who were learning to become clergy themselves. And these are, again, youngsters. These are the youth of Ishgard who have fought tooth and nail in order to get into the best school for learning about their religion so they can become clerics and they can join the Trinity, which is a big part, and become a major influential part of society. And once again, despite the fact this does contain some of the Hildibrand characters, it's a much more serious story. That I very much enjoyed because it addressed a number of things. It addressed the inequality that has been a plague of Ishgard for such a long time, and it brought back, and this is something we're going to talk about again in a second, it really brought back that when you first arrive in Ishgard at the beginning of Heavensward, one of the first things you're told is don't go to the broom. It's where the paws are. Lol at the paws. Don't go over there. And these deal with some of the students who have essentially won scholarships from that background, orphans from that background, who have now worked their asses off to move up the echelons of society and give themselves a chance, and to work through that and to deal with the societal impacts and also the arrogance and the disdain that comes from the high houses. And it's a Hogwarts style medley of stories where there's like, it feels a bit Harry Potter, but it also deals with some really serious subject matter, but it also keeps it really light in various areas with high school crushes. It's got this kind of Twilight feel to it in some parts, which I'm not trying to put you off. I'm just trying to say it takes you in a number of different directions, which is exactly what we've come to expect from a Final Fantasy XIV storyline, is that it's not just a case of, hey, this is really fun for 5 minutes. Isn't this character a little goofy? It takes you on a whole myriad of journeys where your emotions are just all over the place every single way. And I highly recommend, I've not spoiled a lot there, but if you've not seen this and you're wondering maybe where the old spectacles emote comes from, and it's got some very nice specific glamours that come from there, it's worth your time, but it is long. It's a very, for the fact that it's just a side quest that's sitting in Ishgard and it's probably been sat on your map for literally years for some of you, it's so much worth it to find this little gem of a storyline that also fully fleshes out the repercussions of your actions from dealing with the Dragonsong War. Thoroughly enjoyable. The last thing I, of course, then found out I could do, and I loved this actually, and I really wish this would happen in more games, is the epilogue leading into Stormblood. And this was really how you could put a bow on the end of an expansion, and I think this was great because it basically takes you on a journey to refresh you of all the major characters you've come to know, some people you've come to love, some people you've come to hate, and some people you've lost along the way throughout what is such an involved, embedded story that when the game was current would have taken you an exceedingly long time, and no doubt a lot of these characters will have been forgotten. But the great thing is, and we all know this now, Final Fantasy XIV uses its old characters in a really big, prominent way throughout its ongoing stories. It doesn't forget where it came from. And I mean that not in a case of the roots of the company, but in the actual geographical areas of where the game came from. It doesn't go, oh, well, we have Ishgard now, so Limsa and Gridania, they don't exist anymore. Uldar's out of there because we're onto the new and improved thing and confining all the players to a brand new area with its new zones. It goes, no, because, you know, Raban is going to be important. The Sultana is going to be important. Merliboobs is going to be important. Kenna's going to be important. The Mughals are going to be important. And we're going to have to go back to those areas and deal with those because the Alliance is still pushing forward. As well as the side characters, be it Ishtola's sister, or even remembering Haurchefant for all he's done. And this epilogue, there were several characters I didn't remember. And even though I've done the content recently, to go back and be like, oh, yeah. Oh, I remember that now. That was just a side quest, but you almost know in your heart of hearts that character's going to pop up again. You know it. They're reminding you for a reason. It's not just to refresh you before Stormblood came out. It's because that character's going to come important in the future. And having this little, it's just a tour. It's just a tour. And it's well worth going on because once again, there are several people who've like, I've just not bothered with this. I just didn't do it because I just smashed the MSQ and I went on my merry way into Stormblood. I just finished the MSQ and then was straight on and as if there was no gap in content whatsoever. Whereas finding these little gems like this and being like, and a big thanks to the community for telling me they exist and be like, you should probably check this out, is really touching because it brings, and not only that, it also refreshes you on the journey you've just been on, even if you've only done it recently, about how involved it was. And I remember when the story I talked about in Heavensward, it's like 40 odd characters. Although I focused my feelings on, say, 4 of them, it was like 40 odd characters that you dealt with in order to build to that climax. And going through that was fantastic as well. So, what I can say, now that I've maybe pushed you to go and find some older content that maybe is still brand new for you, is that we are there. We are heading into Stormblood. And I can tell you as of recording this, I have played for a couple of days now, and I have some really interesting thoughts. And one of the best things that I'm doing from my content, especially for my long-time viewers, is assessing the developmental changes that Squeenix took on in terms of feature creep, how they're managing their characters, how they're redesigning parts of the game as the game evolved and kept going. And it's been really intriguing because you can tell very quickly when a new expansion starts. No different for our World of Warcraft viewers. If you go from vanilla to the Burning Crusade, there are dramatic differences in quest layout, combat styles, profession changes, travel changes, layouts, routes, environmental changes. All those are very, very obvious, right? When you move from a vanilla style or a classic WoW style to a Burning Crusade style, you can feel that. And the same again when you get into Wrath of the Lich King. You feel that they're now dividing the players up. They learn from the layers of the past, and now they're doing X, Y, and Z in order to accommodate that and to try and make things better for the players. What lessons did they learn? And so we'll be looking at that in the next video. All right, guys. So I just want to say thank you so much for watching. This journey I've been on has been utterly incredible. I'm having so much fun, like ridiculous amounts of fun, and I genuinely cannot wait to see where Stormblood takes us. I'll be back to let you know. All right. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.